November 12, 2025, a date that will be etched into Venezuela's history books. The country wakes to a new reality as the government declares a state of maximum alert. Venezuela is on edge, bracing for what its leaders call an imminent threat from the United States. The atmosphere in Caracas is tense, shops are shuttered, families gather around radios and televisions, and rumors swirl through the city's crowded streets. The government has mobilized nearly 200,000 troops, soldiers, police, militias, and citizen units, across the nation. This is no drill. For many, it's the largest show of force they've witnessed in their lifetimes, with convoys rumbling through towns and helicopters thundering overhead. From the Caribbean coast to the Andes, defensive positions are everywhere, and key infrastructure is under heavy guard. Oil refineries, power plants, and communication hubs are now ringed with sandbags and armed patrols, as the nation's lifelines are fortified against possible sabotage. The message to Washington is clear. Any intervention will be met with fierce resistance. Officers rally their troops, invoking national pride and the memory of past struggles for independence. This is Venezuela's largest military mobilization in decades, transforming the country into a fortress. Barricades rise overnight, and city streets are lined with sandbags and checkpoints, as ordinary citizens join the effort to defend their homeland. Years of sanctions and political tension with the U.S. have now escalated into open military posturing. The airwaves are filled with government broadcasts, urging unity and vigilance, while opposition voices warn of the dangers of escalation. The government frames the U.S. naval buildup in the Caribbean as a direct provocation, not a routine patrol. Military commanders monitor radar screens around the clock, tracking every movement off the coast, convinced that an incursion could come at any moment. Caracas insists this deployment is a defensive necessity, a sovereign nation's right to protect itself. Officials address the nation, vowing to defend Venezuela's independence and sovereignty at all costs. The world watches, uncertain if this show of force will deter conflict or bring it closer. As diplomats scramble and analysts debate, the fate of Venezuela, and perhaps the region, hangs in the balance. President Nicolas Maduro has become the face of Venezuela's defiance, standing at the forefront of a nation under immense pressure. As international scrutiny intensifies and foreign powers threaten intervention, Maduro projects unwavering confidence, determined to rally his people against what he calls imperialist aggression. With fiery speeches that echo through city squares and rural towns alike, he calls on Venezuelans to unite, urging them to defend their homeland and their revolution at all costs. His words ignite a sense of national pride and resistance among his supporters. "We will not be intimidated," he declares, ordering the armed forces and militias to maximum alert. The military, a crucial pillar of his government, is mobilized to demonstrate strength and readiness. Maduro accuses the U.S. of fabricating a pretext for invasion, claiming, "They want our oil, they want to destroy our revolution." He frames the crisis as a battle for Venezuela's sovereignty and natural resources, warning that foreign interests seek to undermine the nation's independence. He warns that any attack will trigger a nationwide state of emergency, granting the government sweeping powers. Behind closed doors, officials prepare for every scenario, determined to maintain control and order. The message is clear: Venezuela will resist, street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood. Ordinary citizens are called upon to join the defense, transforming city blocks into strongholds of resistance. Defense Minister Padrino Lopez echoes this, vowing the military is united and ready for sacrifice. He assures the nation that the armed forces stand firmly behind Maduro, prepared to defend the country's sovereignty. "We are preparing for a war of resistance," he says, emphasizing the military's commitment to unconventional tactics and long-term defense. Training intensifies as soldiers ready themselves for any possible incursion, and will make every inch of Venezuela a nightmare for invaders. The government's strategy is to make occupation costly and unsustainable for any foreign force. These statements are more than rhetoric. They're the backbone of a national defense strategy. Every move is calculated, every resource mobilized to ensure the country's survival. The government's resolve is clear. Any foreign intervention will be met with total resistance, as Venezuela braces itself for whatever challenges may come. Venezuela's fears are fueled by a massive U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean, a show of force that has not been seen in the region for decades. The sudden arrival of American warships and aircraft has sent shockwaves through the Venezuelan government and its people, raising concerns about the true intentions behind this unprecedented deployment. This is the largest U.S. military operation in the Caribbean since the 1989 Panama invasion, a historical event that still looms large in the memories of many Latin Americans. The scale and speed of the current buildup have drawn comparisons to that era, with analysts warning of the potential for history to repeat itself. At the heart of the operation is the USS Gerald R. Ford, the world's largest and most advanced aircraft carrier. It leads a formidable strike group, including several destroyers and a nuclear-powered submarine, all stationed just off Venezuela's coast. Their presence is a clear signal of American military might and readiness. Officially, Washington frames this deployment as part of a sweeping anti-drug operation, accusing Caracas of facilitating large-scale drug trafficking. These charges are strongly denied by Venezuelan officials, who claim the U.S. is using the war on drugs as a pretext for military pressure and political interference. Since September, U.S. forces have dramatically escalated their actions, launching airstrikes on vessels they suspect of smuggling drugs. These operations have resulted in the destruction of multiple boats and the deaths of dozens of alleged traffickers, further inflaming tensions between the two countries. For Venezuela, these are not simply law enforcement actions, they are seen as deliberate provocations designed to intimidate and destabilize the government. Each new incident at sea brings the two militaries closer to a direct confrontation, raising the risk of a wider conflict. The Trump administration's hardline stance, combined with a highly visible military presence, has created a powder keg atmosphere in the region. The rhetoric from both sides has grown increasingly heated, with neither willing to back down. Each side now views the other's every move with deep suspicion and mistrust. The risk of miscalculation or misunderstanding is ever present, making the situation dangerously unpredictable. The region stands on a knife's edge, with both militaries on high alert and the world watching closely, hoping that cooler heads will prevail before a spark ignites open conflict. As troops mobilize, Venezuela's government is tightening its grip at home. The threat of U.S. intervention has become a tool for President Maduro to consolidate power and rally support. The National Assembly, dominated by Maduro allies, has passed new laws granting the executive sweeping authority over military deployments. Critics warn these laws centralize power and blur the line between the military and pro-government militias. The government frames dissent as unpatriotic, casting itself as the sole defender of Venezuelan sovereignty. Opposition groups, already weakened by disputed elections, now face accusations of treachery if they criticize the government. The new laws formalize the integration of civilian militias, raising fears of internal repression as much as external defense. In Venezuela, the line between national security and political control has never been thinner. Venezuela's military knows it can't win a conventional war against the U.S. Instead, commanders are preparing for asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and urban resistance. Troops are dispersing into small mobile units across hundreds of locations, trained to blend in and strike unpredictably. Thousands of Russian-made manpads have been distributed to threaten U.S. aircraft and limit their mobility. The goal? Make any invasion costly and chaotic, eroding U.S. political will. A darker plan? Anarchization? Would unleash armed civilian groups to sow chaos in major cities, making the country ungovernable for any occupier. The strategy is clear. Avoid decisive battles, inflict steady losses, and turn Venezuela into a quagmire. For any invader, victory would come at a staggering price. Despite the show of strength, Venezuela's military faces deep problems. Many units are under strength, plagued by desertion as soldiers seek better lives elsewhere. Much of the Russian-supplied equipment is in disrepair, with spare parts and expertise in short supply. Morale is dangerously low. Soldiers earn little, struggle to feed their families, and face rampant corruption. Commanders often barter with local farmers just to feed their troops. The loyalty of the rank and file is uncertain. Hunger and hardship may outweigh patriotic calls to arms. These vulnerabilities could shatter Venezuela's defense if war comes. The world is watching and urging restraint. At a Latin American summit, nearly every nation rejected military force, calling for dialogue and a peaceful solution. Brazil's President Lula warns that war would trigger a refugee crisis and destabilize the continent. War is never the answer, he insists. Venezuela's problems must be solved by Venezuelans. Russia, a key ally, condemns the U.S. buildup and offers technical support, raising the stakes. Within the U.S., public opinion is wary. Most Americans oppose a land attack, but Congress has given the White House broad authority. The gap between public caution and political maneuvering adds to the unpredictability. International pressure for diplomacy is strong, but the risk of escalation remains. The crisis is now global, with every move watched closely. For ordinary Venezuelans, the crisis is personal and immediate. Soldiers patrol neighborhoods, jets roar overhead, and war talk fills the air. Fear is everywhere. Supporters of the government see the mobilization as patriotic defense, joining rallies and militias. Opponents fear repression more than invasion, worried the military buildup is aimed at crushing dissent. Many feel trapped, caught between a government they distrust and the threat of foreign bombs. Soldiers themselves face hardship and uncertainty, struggling with low pay and hunger even as they prepare for war. The gap between leaders' rhetoric and daily reality is stark. On the streets, anxiety and division run deep. Venezuela and the U.S. are locked in a dangerous standoff, and the future is uncertain. A single misstep, a skirmish at sea, a downed aircraft, could ignite a wider war. A U.S. intervention would trigger Venezuela's asymmetric resistance, plunging the country into chaos, and likely sparking a regional humanitarian crisis. Yet, there's still a chance for diplomacy. Latin American opposition to war and U.S. public skepticism could force both sides to the negotiating table. International mediators may step in, but deep mistrust makes compromise difficult. For 30 million Venezuelans, the stakes are life and death. The world hopes for reason, but the risk of catastrophe is real. As tensions mount, the region and the world waits to see what comes next.